Hey guys, it's your pal Victor here from Cult Classics and Cult Following. We're doing some film reviews today, and today we are reviewing the movie Chaos Walking, which is directed by Doug Liman, who older folks might know him from directing stuff like Mr. and Mrs. Smith or Swingers, versus other folks who probably know him from directing stuff like Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, which is one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the past 10 years or so. This is based on a young adult novel, and it's not a young adult novel series, but what it does is it kind of like doesn't set it up for sequels, which is probably a good indicator here that they're trying to make a good one-shot movie based on that material. Uh, this movie is really interesting in a variety of ways. Um, the world building in this movie is really epic. Um, and a lot of it deals with this place called New World, where people who have left Earth because, global warming, pollution, whatever, are going to settle and make settlements here. And we specifically follow this one settlement called Prentice Town. And Prentice Town only has men living there. The deal is, when you land on this planet New World, all the men develop telepathy and none of the women do. And Prentice Town is ruled by this man named David Prentice, who's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who's wearing this bear coat underneath this safari outfit. It makes him look the biggest pimp in the world. And they've got all their own kind of like male society going around. And there's no women. In the story, we're told as there's an indigenous species on this planet called the Spackle, which wiped them all out. And we mainly follow this one kid named Todd Hewitt, who's played by Tom Holland, who, you might know from the Marvel Spider-Man movies. And one day, this ship crashes that was trying to find New World, that has this girl named Viola on it, played by Daisy Ridley. And, Todd's been having some issues with his, foster parents, and he really looks up to the mayor, David Prentice, and he tells him, hey, there's this crash ship, and this girl, I didn't see who was on it, but there's a survivor, but I couldn't see their noise. And what I mean by noise is everybody who is on this planet who has telepathy, their thoughts are able to be seen and heard by everyone, which would be a nightmare in any universe. So it's everyone who has it, it's kind of seen in different ways. So Prentice has exacting control over his thoughts. He can build fences and walls to encase people that are totally three-dimensional. There's a preacher there played by David Okeo. Oyeko, I forget his last name, or I can't pronounce it properly. He played MLK in Selma, and he's kind of like a preacher who's hounded by guilt or mental illness, so his thoughts are always fire and brimstone encircling him always. And Todd is just like anything that pops into his brain instantly shows up. So along the way, he realizes stuff is going to happen to this girl if he doesn't get her out of there. And his stepfather, his stepfather is played by Damian Bashir from Hateful Eight and Machete, who makes a really strong dramatic turn here. And I think this was a cool casting bit for him, because it's nice to see him not always be stereotyped as like the Mexican guy. So he tells him to get himself and this girl out of there. And along the way of their journey, they start to realize that like maybe everything David's been told about the story of Prentice Town, there being only men on this planet, is kind of false. And he kind of tries to learn how it is to relate to a woman, and they both have different experiences because she's been on a spaceship all her life, so she's never experienced real life, and he's doesn't even know how to read. So they start teaching each other and building a bond, and just seeing that develop is cool. They have good banter against, versus each other. Um, and the supporting performances are really strong, especially when they find another settlement that's led by a character played by Cynthia Erivo, who you might know from Bad Times at El Royale. She was the singer, and she was also on that HBO show, The Outsider, which is an awesome show, and you should totally watch if you get the opportunity to do so. And the special effects are really good, as are the action sequences. I don't really want to spoil any more of this movie, but I will say, I'll tell you my biggest problem with this movie is it sets up a lot of cool world building, but then it just leaves you with a ton of unanswered questions, like especially in regards to the aspect of like the settlements on this planet and how telepathy itself is used. Just weird. There's just things here that, like, in terms of how the economy works on this planet, doesn't really make sense. And there's a lot of deus ex machina situations that go on here, and it's really hard to turn those off as you're watching this movie. Especially when you see at one point infrastructure was being they were starting to build infrastructures, and the whole issue with the boogeyman, the spackle on this planet, who you kind of see are like, the one, you see one that's wounded and it's covered in scars and only has one arm, and you realize there's a lot of, you've set up the issue of manifest destiny here. The place is called New World. So did they just like wipe out this indigenous species almost to kind of like live here? And it sets up some disturbing kind of ideas that it never follows up on, and I'm not sure if it's just there to draw the parallel, but at the same time, when you set things up and don't really explain further, it's a little it feels like a cop-out, like you want to say something about this, but you're not willing to actually say something about this. So that's kind of annoying. And then I hate to say it, but like Daisy Ridley's character, she's the only character we don't see her thoughts in this movie, because she's a woman, really, is what you're supposed to get out of it. But then when Cynthia Erivo is on screen, you get a strong sense of her personality, versus Daisy Ridley's character, Viola, who you kind of don't really get a lot of that from. She tends to come on screen a lot of as sort of a walking plot device that Tom Holland is really attracted to. So it kind of lends itself to that manic pixie girl trope, especially when a lot of his thoughts are pretty girl, yellow hair, want to kiss her. It's like you don't get a lot of her inner life coming across in this movie. And she does seem to kind of just save Tom Holland a lot and come across as a way for him to grow. She doesn't really have a lot of arc, unless it's like, kind of seeing that he's not a terrible person. And even then, it just like, oh, you don't know how to read? Let me read this important thing that's going to be part of your character arc. And it's just like, maybe that's par for the course when it's males writing female characters in action movies. But it also screams of like, this is one of the issues with the way that Daisy's character was written in Star Wars, where she just happened to be really good at everything, and then we didn't get a lot of her inner life. And that is kind of, I don't like when people use when directors use an actor's other role as shorthand for character development in another project, and it almost feels that way, like she's playing Rey in this movie, and that's kind of unfair. But I kind of feel like this could have, we could have benefited seeing more of her inner life. We only get a few shots of her before her ship crashes on New World, and everything after that is just kind of like staying alive, you know. And I will also say, if you are sensitive to animals, this is probably not a movie you would want to see. Um, I always kind of give that warning. I'm not going to tell you what it specifically pertains to. But yeah, and then there's another thing that happens in this movie in terms of like people who control their thoughts really well can kind of create thought clones of themselves and other people. That like they can, like, if you really picture somebody well, you can make essentially like, like a clone of them appear. I mean, it's not real, but to everyone else around you, it looks real. And that also makes you wonder, like, all these guys are like in living in this all male town. And it's like, you would think there'd almost be like an economy around that, like, or, like I said, like a movie theater or something. There's a scene where somebody's sleeping and they're picturing baseball games in their head. It's like, this is kind of an amazing thing, and it's sort of taken for granted, that everybody just falls in line under one person who can imagine things better than they can. It's just one of those things that kind of just doesn't really make sense to me. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the film. It's a good movie. It just lends you to nitpick a lot. I'll say good, not great, but if you enjoy stuff like Edge of Tomorrow and you enjoy Tom Holland's work, and there's some good character performances here, I would still say check it out, but maybe wait for cable. Anyway, until next time, guys, I hope you enjoy the review, and we will see you soon on Cult Following. Find us at cultclassicsaz.com and Cult Classics on YouTube, and we will talk to you all later and see you at the movies. All right, bye.